Okay, yep. It just says starting to record. All right. Have a good meeting, y'all. Bye.
Okay, thanks. So, welcome to the July 25th meeting of the Non-Code Contributors Guide. Uh, I am your host, Noah Abrahams. We have small attendance this week, most likely due to Google Next, and we only have a couple of things on the invite, or on the agenda rather, so this should be a moderately short meeting. The first thing, which has been our issue for the last couple meetings, is we need to sort out the Zoom. Right now we are using the Contribex weekly Zoom. Hopefully we will be able to continue using this same Zoom moving forward. If we cannot, then we'll get that sorted out in the next few days. But if this is going to be the official Zoom for the meeting, then we'll update the invite, and finally everyone will actually have the correct link. So that'll be great. We'll actually get people in here. The only other couple things we've got going on right now, since we already have the placeholder in GitHub for where we're going to block off our work as the sub-page of the contributors guide. The next thing we want to do is to start engaging the various SIGs on how we're going to engage with them, really, I suppose, is the first thing. So there is a working doc that I've set up just for work outside the minutes. We're going to put together basically a form letter so that we can have consistency in introducing the effort that we're trying to accomplish to the SIGs. And we've also got a list of all the SIGs where people can sign up and claim what SIG they want to interact with, so that we don't have one person just dealing with, what we got, 33 SIGs, something like that. So far we have exactly 2 signups. Bob took SIG multi-cluster, and Ehor signed up for SIG PM. So thanks for that, guys. I'm going to sort of hold off on signing up for various SIGs in that context until other people have had a chance, and I'm going to effectively take the dregs. That's how I'm going to look at it. If nobody else signs up, then I guess I'm getting like 30 SIGs to deal with.
You can break it up a bit more than that. You won't be stuck with all of them.
And realistically, that is all we have on the agenda for this week, because we have very low attendance and a lot of agenda points. But those are the important things. We need to get our blurb hammered out, and we need to figure out who's going to bring that blurb to each of the individual SIGs. I was going to take a first pass at writing the blurb. Does anyone have any comments, any ways that you would like to approach group writing, something like that? Should we each take a stab at it and then try and correlate them all together? Or anybody done anything like that before?
Well, so I didn't join this until after you decided on the SIG strategy.
Okay.
Can we go back and talk about what is it we're asking the SIGs for?
Sure, that's a great question. Realistically, we're trying to identify, I mean, we've said a couple times, we're trying to identify the roles, we're trying to identify the tasks. But what we're asking the SIGs for in this context is, how can this group, in building a contributor's guide for people who do things other than write code, how can we get the people to the SIGs to fill the needs that they have? To say, we know that all the SIGs have needs other than writing code. What do you see that you need? And then maybe we can extrapolate based on some SIGs see things differently from others. What are the roles that would be useful cross SIG, and what would be the roles that are very useful to individual specific SIGs? So the long and short of it is going to be, hi, what gaps can we fill for you that do not involve writing code? Make sense?
Yeah. So we're writing a guide for non-code contributors, and we want to actually give them some guidance and specifically where to contribute. Yeah.
That's part of it, yes.
And how to talk to various SIGs about non-code stuff. Although I have a feeling a lot of that's going to come down to attend the SIG meeting.
That's probably.
And okay. Because I kind of feel, based on my experience doing this for the general sort of ContribX thing, that the more structured we can make the questions that we ask the SIGs, the better the results we'll get.
Okay.
So, and then one of the other questions there comes, how detailed are we going to want to get on the other end? I mean, there's obviously would be a lot of value in having a document that says, hey, SIG API machinery has these particular non-code needs, and these are the ones that are in the main SIG, and these are the sub-projects, etc. But then such a document would need to be maintained. And I guess then we'd be talking about providing some mechanism for the SIGs to maintain that information. Which almost suggests that we should have it in some document the SIGs already maintain, like the SIG doc in community.
Okay. That is a really good question. The initial idea was just to put it into the contributors guide, but I think if we can start something that is on that road of documentation to process to hopefully some form of automation, and then it's sort of the ideal, right?
Yeah.
That would be a better result out of this that, to be frank, I hadn't really considered.
Yeah, well, because the thing is that anything that we put in the contributors guide realistically is going to have to be very high level, because it's simply not realistic to expect the majority of SIG leads to remember to update that when things like the list of sub-projects changes.
I think that was part of the idea with having someone sort of take ownership of specific SIGs. So when that sort of thing changes, they'd be the ones with going back and updating the doc.
Okay. Well, then that would require us to broaden out this group to make sure that we actually have people who regularly participate in all or most of the SIGs.
Yeah, that was, I think, the part of the sign-up thing.
Yeah. Well, because, I can go and I can check once with, SIG API machinery, but I don't attend all of their meetings.
Yeah.
It could very easily change in that SIG, and I wouldn't know about it.
And I know that an effort along those lines was also being done in SIG PM, as we were talking about effectively trying to get individual SIG liaisons who could manage that relationship, and duplicating that already difficult effort seems like an even more difficult effort. I kind of wish either Jace or Ehor were here to talk about that. But maybe that is something we can talk about for next week.
We've talked about it a little bit in previous ones, which have been recorded too.
We did a little bit. Alignment of per sig liaison with CPM. Okay, so that is something that we'll have to take on for a future discussion when we have more people who can comment on it.
The other thing that I suggest that we should do is we should brainstorm some suggestions for non-code areas where a SIG might need help, just because I think if we run down a list of categories, we're going to get more responses than if we just say, what are all of the areas? Because the problem with that is it comes up and people start, scratching their heads and going, well, maybe we could kind of...
We have those... we did just
examples
a bunch in, if you scroll down in the doc, there's a link to the skeleton of the non-code contributors page on GitHub.
Mm-hmm.
And we just wrote down, here's examples of non-code focused tasks that we could throw out there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my slight worry is, I think if we were to do this to the SIGs, then we would want to ask them first and then give them examples to fill in, because I don't want to restrict somebody's idea of saying, oh yeah, I could use this, because it doesn't fit into the example context that we've already put together. I want to precede that.
Yeah, I was thinking more
That
like
makes sense.
categories, like I don't know, documentation, release notes, user testing, web stuff. If you follow me?
I do.
Yeah, I think that's, especially the user testing thing, I think is a really good idea.
Let's put that up under how we want to structure this. Categorization of task and role topics, I guess, such as docs, release. And we can fill that in over time, but I think filling in a brainstorm of that is a great idea. User testing, yeah.
Issue triage. There's obviously generic issue triage, but yeah, if, SIG has kind of their own issue triage volunteer, they're going to be much more effective at triage.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But I do want to make sure that we're not losing out, because we are in such a, I don't really want to say it, an untapped space, but in a space that nobody else seems to really be playing in very much. I want to make sure that we're not pigeonholing ourselves into existing processes and missing out on potential benefits. That's my biggest worry with classification. So how we present it is going to be important.
Yeah. Well, we want in other things. It's just that I know that if we put people on the spot and say, what are all the non-code things you need, they're going to have trouble coming up with things.
That is absolutely correct. Here, list everything.
Yeah. And that even if we supply them with some initial categories for them to say, hey, we need that, we don't need that.
So like, here are a few ideas.
Yeah, they'll get thinking about other things.
Yes, exactly.
Actually be a great, just helping write docs for the release towards the end.
Yeah, well, for example, I can tell you for a fact a lot of SIGs could use somebody to help edit and improve their release notes. like most of them, whether or not they realize they need this.
Having done that, yeah.
The so.
Okay, so this is good. This is good. In the topic of how we're going to approach this brainstorming, should we focus on doing it here in the call and taking notes, or should we put it in the doc and just let people dump as they see fit? I like the idea of bouncing off of each other because it, as you said, stimulates ideas. Here's something to think about. Well, here's something that's not really related, but that made me think of it. Any thoughts on that?
Sure. Well, I think we've got some initial categories here.
Mm-hmm.
This might be enough for a good starting point.
Yeah.
So then I guess I'll take the first stab at writing the intro blurb, and I'm wondering how much of this we want to do verbally during a SIG meeting versus how much would we want to mail out to the list. I think we should approach the blurb as, let's go into a SIG meeting and say, hey, here's what we're trying to accomplish. We're going to mail this out to your mailing list. Or, you know, if it's a closed list, then we could give it to somebody else to mail out and say, here's the information we're looking for because we want to help you. Mm-hmm. If you have the following needs or any needs that are related or unrelated, let us know. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think showing up at a SIG meeting is going to get, and getting on their agenda is going to get a lot more results, but we want, I'm a big fan of forums just because it makes it much easier for us to look at the responses later.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Even if most of the stuff is text blanks, right? Like, do you have any user testing needs? If so, please describe.
So should we maybe put something together on like SurveyMonkey or something?
Yeah.
Or Google.
Or even a Google Doc.
I don't know how to do those polls in Google Docs, but something I could learn.
Yeah. I don't actually care what tool we use.
Okay. Good. So, yeah, we'll figure out what tool we're going to use. Go back through what we got. Zoom, we got the working doc. I'll take first pass at the blurb. We've got some categories that we can throw into some sort of data accumulator, and we'll go from there. Good. That was productive. Hey, thanks, folks.
Not bad for just a few of us.
Yeah, for only 3 people, that was remarkably productive. Anybody got anything else to say? Or are we ready to call it?
I think we're good.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thanks for showing up, folks.
Yep.
And we'll get some more work done for 2 weeks from now.
Thanks.
Have a good Wednesday, everybody.